Okay, welcome to Yeshenorbu Mind Training Center, and as you see, we are very happy to have Venerable Reavey here tonight, and first time in Sweden also, and she will also give a weekend teachings. And she comes from Dundee in Scotland. Remember that name? It's a city of women.
Yes.
The history of women.
Yeah.
And she has been teaching a lot in Copenhagen and other centers in England. So, and she's Lama Yeshe's disciple, one of the founders of FBMT, this international organization we are affiliated with. So she took refuge with Lama Yeshe. That was fantastic. Okay, I give the word to you. Thank you very much for coming here.
No, you're more than welcome. So, right, I'm delighted to be here. You can tell? Absolutely delighted. So how I like to start is doing a relaxation. Meditations fail usually because two things: too much expectation and the inability to relax. And so relaxation is a preliminary to meditation, and it's really important. So we do a relaxation technique. Then I'll ask you to develop a strong motivation for this evening. So you just have a motivation in your mind, what it is you want to achieve. And then you'll focus on that. And then I'll say, and for those of you who are happy to do so, we'll do the refuge prayer. But if you're not happy to do the refuge prayer, just hold that motivation. That's enough. Okay? And the refuge we do twice in Tibetan, once in English. So, comfortable. Comfort is everything in relaxation. Does anyone need another cushion or you're okay? So if you're sitting on a chair, having your feet flat on a cushion or flat on the floor is good. If you can, maybe not have your back resting against the back, but slightly proud. If you can. So we begin by drawing the mind inward, letting go of all the thoughts, ideas and emotions that we had before we sat down, drawing the mind inward. And now we become interested in how the whole body is responding to each in-breath and out-breath. How the body as a whole is responding to each in-breath and out-breath. And for the whole of this meditation, don't impose any rhythm on the breath. Just let your body breathe as it wants to breathe. Allowing one part of your mind to gently sweep your body from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, inside and out, simply noting any areas of tension, doing nothing about it, simply note it and continue with the scanning. And without any change in the rhythm of your breath, and without any effort, simply notice that on the out-breath, all the tension flows away from the body on each out-breath. And as the tension flows from your body with each out-breath, notice how smooth your forehead is. How relaxed all your facial muscles. How spacious the area around the eyes and between the eyes. Notice how relaxed your shoulders have become. Notice how they've dropped a bit to a more comfortable position. How soft your abdomen. How responsive your abdomen now to each in-breath and out-breath. Each in-breath and out-breath. And focus now on the movement of your abdomen with the breath. And keeping the body in this relaxed position, simply notice that without any effort, that on each in-breath, your mind is becoming brighter. Without any effort, your mind becoming sharp and clear on each in-breath. And with a relaxed body and a sharp, clear mind, generate a strong, positive motivation in your mind. What is it you want to achieve this evening? Make it clear in your mind and shift your focus to the motivation. Try to hold it gently with your mind. And try to stay with that motivation. And for those of you who are happy to do so, we can do the refuge prayer, twice in Tibetan, once in English. Sangye chodam soke chonam la, janchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi, Dagi jinso kepe sonam hi, drola penchir sange drupar sho sange chodam soke chonam la, janchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi, dagi jinso kepe sonam hi, drola penchir sange drupar sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Supreme Community. From the collection of merits I create by practicing of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Thank you. So maybe we can lift the prayer books from the floor, that would be good, and maybe just put it on the tables. Brilliant. So, this is the third week of Discovering Buddhism program on mind and its potential. That's what this is about. May I ask how many people have been to either one or two of those weeks? Okay, so more, so that's good. That's good. So what I thought we'd do is this week is looking quite closely at the psychology of mind. So I thought what we'd do to start with is do a meditation and highlight the main points from the first 2 weeks, just to get the mind. I mean, I could have a quiz if you prefer. No, we'll have a meditation. We'll have a meditation. Okay. We'll have a meditation. Just to highlight, so I'll lead you through it. And just bring it to your mind. And when it comes to your mind, enrich it with anything, use your creativity, your experience, make it quite an active process. Okay? So to do this quickly, one method of relaxing quickly is breathing through both nostrils, letting the belly fill, and then out through pursed lips like this. So it's a long out breath. And in that long out breath, you simply let your whole body relax. You do that twice, and then breathe normally. Isn't that reasonable, huh? Okay, so in your own time. So it's breathing in, letting it fill, out through pursed lips. And as you breathe out through pursed lips, let your whole body relax. only twice, and then breathe normally. So we consider that the whole of Buddhist study is grounded in understanding the nature and the function of mind and how it affects our lives. All of Buddhist study is about that. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said there are two good reasons for studying the mind. One, because mind and karma are very closely linked, very closely linked. And two, mind is the basis of our happiness, not external, but internal. And Lama Yeshe used to say, when Buddhists say we are studying Buddhism, what we're saying is we're studying ourselves, our own minds, how to be happy. Understanding that happiness and peaceful is really about emphasis on knowledge and wisdom and nothing to do with dogma. Buddhism feels that the happiness we experience in this life through the five senses are limited, unsatisfactory, and illusory. That the genuine happiness lies deep within the pure nature of our minds. And if we can tap that, then the happiness that you get, the eudaimonia, is a kind of permanence, a kind of joy. It's not limited, and it's based on reality. You could say that Buddhism is a science of the mind. That's quite accurate. And we are practicing Buddhism in order to be genuinely happy, genuinely happy. There's little agreement in the scientific world about mind, where it comes from, what it does. They're not sure. Buddhists point to 25 centuries of internal exploration and verification through practice. Buddhists are quite clear about what the mind is and what it does. And although it's very difficult to talk about mind, like any other phenomena, you talk about it on a conventional level or on an ultimate level. And on a conventional level, the nature of mind is clarity, and its function is to know. And by clarity, Buddhists are not talking about a bright light. They're saying it's that which reflects the nature of reality. It is non-material. Space like in nature, no boundaries. There is no colour and no shape. There's no material, there's no dimensions. You're looking at pure, pristine function and knowing. And this knowing is interesting. It's not really knowing something. It's the mere act of knowing. A subjective effect. Mind is subjective. It arises in dependence upon an object, all minds. And mind is not static, it is dynamic. And mind is full of afflictive, disturbing emotions. But although these afflictive, disturbing emotions come from the mind, they're not the same nature as the mind. And because of that, they come about through causes and conditions. When anything comes about through causes and conditions, you can't eliminate them. You cannot eliminate mind, but you can eliminate the disturbing emotions. And you've been learning that mind is a transient phenomena. It is impermanent. But impermanence here has no negative connotations. It means that which is momentary. One moment of mind giving rise to the next moment of mind. That's what is meant by impermanence of the mind. The mind is subjective. It is an effect, not a cause. But it is the result of causes and conditions. And the wonderful thing about the mind is the main cause of mind is the previous moment of mind. One moment of mind giving rise to the next moment and the next. A series of ever-changing moments, each as the result of a previous moment. Think about it. And if one moment of mind gives rise to the next, how could there be a beginning of all of that? And if one moment of mind gives rise to the next, how could there be an end? What gave rise to this moment of mind you're experiencing now? The previous moment of mind. And when you deeply think about it, the question, when did it all start, cannot arise. And if one moment of mind gives rise to the next moment of mind, the question, when does it end, never arises. Thank you. Just a capping up. Very easy, just main points. Is there any of those main points that you've studied or thought about that you need clarification on, or you want to bring anything up? Yes?
This is the next moment of mind, create the next moment of mind.
Yes.
In somewhere in my, maybe, I don't know.
In your mind?
In my mind. It's like, I feel like there becomes this kind of idea of time coming up.
Yes, yes.
Because so then one part of me kind of revolt to this next, because it feels like time, the question of time doesn't arise when I think of mind. It's like
I think that's reasonable.
There is no time. So then these moments, I get confused.
Okay.
Because
but don't get it mixed up. Everything in the Dharma is contextual.
Yeah.
Okay? So that brings up if we ever get a chance to talk about impermanence and emptiness, time has its own special category, which we would need to explore from a Dharma point of view. It doesn't mean quite the same as what we mean in this thing. But you're right, you get this idea of timelessness. Because no one ever set us down when you were 3 or 4 years old and said, everything has a beginning, a middle and an end. No one ever did that. But somehow, right here in the soul of us, we feel it. Everything does have a beginning, middle and end. You know. And you can, I've talked to people and going, they say, well, and I say, what is this? What gave rise to that, miss? And I'll say, well, that. But what gave rise to that? And I go, that. And I've sat there for 10 minutes. 10 minutes going. And in the end, this gentleman said to me, you're going to keep doing that, aren't you? I said, yeah. Because cause and effect works like that, doesn't it? If one moment of mind gives rise to the next, how could there have been a beginning? How is that possible? Because when could there be the first moment of mind? If there wasn't a previous moment to give rise to it, where did it come from? And then if you project it forward, what is the point of one moment of mind? Its only existence is to give rise to this. So how could this suddenly stop when this gives rise to this? And so then this idea of the river of mind, river of mental moments moving through time is interesting. It becomes like it's like if you had a huge telescope and you looked at a waterfall. When you look at a waterfall, if you've never seen it, it just looks like a sheet, doesn't it? It just looks like a sheet of moving water. But if you had the right lens, you would see many, many, many droplets. Very fast, yes? Mind is like that. It feels solid, but it is not. It is a temporary phenomena giving rise to one moment of mind. And if you imagine a map with a river, in one country the river is called this. In the next country the river is called that. Same river, but it's called something else. It's like that with mind. Mind is like that, going from one lifetime to the next. Very interesting.
That's my question. Like a river, I can really relate to.
Feels like that.
It feels like a river. So then this kind of, I think when it becomes steps,
yes,
I think it feels like more like it doesn't feel like mind. So the river, I don't see how. But
because
maybe
it's so
possible
fast.
to look in
it's so fast.
Yeah.
In one snap of the fingers, a minimum of 60 mental moments. Minimum. And there's research that shows a lot more than that. Minimum of 60. It's so fast that it feels like this solid, permanent phenomena. It feels like that. But the Buddha was very clear. Not like that. Where the continuum of mind, you could say, is permanent. The continuum. Mind itself, impermanent. But not with the connotations that we think. We tend to think permanent good, impermanent bad. It's not like that. Impermanence here means that which is momentary. That which is momentary. Change. And thank goodness. If it wasn't changing, how could we change our minds? If it were permanent, you'd learn nothing, would we? We wouldn't learn anything. But because that's working, we can use it. Any other questions come up from that?
Venerable, this 60 in one moment.
Minimum.
60
mental moments.
Mental moments.
Mental moments.
Are they related to their respective objects?
Everything is respective objects. Yes, each moment of mind is, and we'll come up to that because that's important. Because mind does not just hang about going, "Hello, give me something to do," you know. Because when we look at that, we'll look at the 6 minds. Thank you. That reminds me. If I forget, remind me. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, if you take all of Buddha's teachings, you could put them in 3 baskets. And these baskets are called the Tripitaka. Maybe you've heard of that, the Tripitaka. And the first basket of all the teachings is all the teachings of the Buddha in relation to monastic and lay vows. Okay? All the teachings in one basket are to do with monastic vows and lay vows. Then you've got the second basket called the Sutra Pitaka. And that has all the teachings of the Buddha in relation to concentration. Right? And then the third basket is called the Abhidharma Pitaka. And that's got all the teachings in relation to developing wisdom. And when we're talking about mind and mind in its potential, all the teachings come from the Abhidharma, from the Abhidharma basket. It's good to know that you don't have to remember these things, but it's good to know where they come from. And from the Abhidharma, then you had Indian and Tibetan scholars that produce works on showing people, you know, exactly what the wisdom was, how to develop it. And so you'll come across the Abhidharma Kosha, and you'll come across Vasambandhu. You'll come across Abhidharma Samuchaya, and you'll come across the Venerable Asanga. And this is important because these 2 texts are what the monks study when they're studying the psychology of the Buddha's, of mind. So all of what was coming here is coming from the teachings of the Abhidharma Kosha and the Abhidharma Samuchaya from the 2 brothers Vasambandhu and Asanga, 5th, 6th century. Okay? Just to know. It's always good to know. Now, there are many ways of studying the mind. It's a huge topic. His Holiness starts everything off by saying, it is very difficult to talk about mind. No kidding. It is very difficult. And that's just to talk about it. Simply because mind means different things to different people. Also, when you're studying the mind from both a psychological point of view and what's called an epistemology point of view, then what you've got is a real language code. You almost have to learn a different language code in order to really study the mind. In the same way when science, in physics, you couldn't use ordinary language discussing physics. You wouldn't get anywhere. You wouldn't be able to formulate a decent question, let alone understand the answer. And physicists do not study mind. Buddhists study mind. And so they have a language code because they have to be quite forensic in their description. Do you see what I'm saying? You've got to be really, really precise when it comes to mind. And mostly we're not precise in our language. We're not precise. We're very kind of all-inclusive, you know. We spend a lot of time saying, you know what I mean. And the person goes, yeah. Not a clue. I have a friend that does that. She has a conversation like, well, you know, and the other day, well, and then, well, you, and I'm sitting there going, what? I have no idea what this woman's talking about, you know? And we're like that, but you can't do that with mind. You can't do that with mind. So, when you're talking about this, the 2 approaches to mind, the psychological approach and the epistemological approach, from the psychological approach, you're really looking at different types of mind, from the point of view of mind being, the mind that we have now being a compassionate mind, or a hurtful mind, or a prideful mind, like that, from a psychological point of view, not from an epistemological point of view. So, when we're studying the psychology of mind, it's different types of mind, its effect, and how environment affects the different types of mind, and then how the different types of mind and environment enact upon us and make us behave with body, speech, and mind in certain ways. That's the study of that. So what you're looking at really is you're looking at a process in psychology of moving away, because it's all about you and how you enact within the environment, right? It's moving away from suffering and delusion towards wisdom and peace. So that's the journey in the psychology of mind. Okay? Because it is psychology, so where are you? Suffering and delusion, sorry. Where do you want to be? Wisdom and peace. So what is the psychology of mind? If you study that, what is it doing? It's moving you on that journey. That's what psychology is about. The other way of studying the mind is what's called the epistemological point of view, and that's very, very useful, and it involves a very elaborate language code. But here you're looking at different types of knowledge. You're looking more like the processes of knowledge. It's looking at the nature of knowledge and how we know what we know. So it has to be quite precise. And it's moving us really from. So what would the journey be? If it's the type of knowledge, how we know what we know, it's forensic. So it's moving you from, the journey is from ignorance to wisdom, that's the journey. Or you could say from conceptualization to direct perception. So it's all about mind, but the journey is different. The journey is different. So, fun, huh? And so, if we start with the psychology of mind, the first thing we have to come to grips with is from the Abhidharma, what type of minds do we tend to have? Yes? So you could say the first thing you get to grip with in psychology of mind is whether you have a positive mind, a wholesome mind, an unwholesome mind, or a neutral mind. And this is vital. This is absolutely vital, that we're able to know what they are, recognize when they appear, and know how to deal with them. And initially, when you say wholesome and unwholesome and neutral, it's like, not many fancy words in that. Wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral. But it's vital that we know and we recognize when they arise in the mind, and it's vital that we know how to deal with them. That's the thing. And so, because of that, what I'd like you to do, in groups of 2 or 3, very interesting, I promise, is to work together, but I want you to identify at least 3 wholesome, positive minds, 3 unwholesome, negative minds. There'll be questions afterwards, okay? So. Well, if I went by all the discussion, then I would think the feedback's going to be very, very good. And sometimes when you start with the psychology of mind, it can be deceptively simple. Deceptively. But the whole idea is really identifying these 3 mind states and working with them. Recognizing what gave, once you know what they are, then you can go in what gave rise to it. Yes? Then you can go into what it could go towards. And then you can choose whether to enhance the positive minds and how to reduce and eliminate negative minds. And as for neutral minds, we'll definitely talk about that. So, what type of minds? You see, in answer to this question, somebody just said to you, what's a positive type of mind? And they could start talking about the 6 types of mind, couldn't they? They could start talking about a mind that's really clear. Yes? There's lots of answers to the mind. So context is everything. When you're looking from a psychological point of view, you're really looking at behaviour. You're looking at the types of mind that produce happiness and unhappiness. You're understanding the causes and conditions that give rise to both happiness and unhappiness, and then you can clearly work with them. So the answers you give to this is in the context of psychology. So in that context, what is wholesome and positive minds? Give us, you know, hit me with it. What type of minds are they? I wrote down some stuff myself.
Compassionate.
Compassionate mind. Would you say that the compassionate mind is a wholesome mind?
Yeah.
Well, so would I. Straightforward, isn't it? Yes. Yes. So, once you're clear about that, then you can start looking at what gave rise to compassion, so that you can catch the compassion earlier and enhance. You can watch where compassion can lead you. Yes? And you can start eliminating causes and conditions which might move the compassion towards self-pity, say. Right? That makes sense, doesn't it? But that's where psychology is going to. That's what it's dealing with. What other type of wholesome mind?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. Is curiosity. Do you know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I tend to think yes. But from the text point of view, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll tell you for why. Because there has to be a reason, eh? So, when you're talking about unwholesome minds, they all have one thing in common. So hold on to that curiosity. Give me other positive, wholesome minds.
Calm. A calm mind.
A calm mind, okay.
Clear.
Yes, here we go. definitions. I'm no keen. Okay, clear, calm, all right. What other type of mind? Compassion gives you a clue. What else? Generous mind. A loving mind. Flexibility. Flexibility, maybe. Empathetic. You see, these type of mind states all have one thing in common. What do you think they are? They all have one thing in common.
Taking other people?
Yes, exactly. Wholesome minds always take other people into consideration. Always. Which is why I'm slightly worried about flexibility, slightly worried about curiosity. I can see that it could be, but from a wholesome point of view, from the Buddha Dharma, does it include others? If it includes others, I think you're doing well. I think you're doing well. Now, what about unwholesome minds? Come on, that was dead easy, right? What type of mind is an unwholesome mind? Anger. Jealousy.
Not rejoicing in others.
Greed. We've got this all pat, right? Now that says something about us in this room, right? We got the unwholesome quite well. What does that have in common?
Thinking about yourself? All about me.
It's all about me, and it's always, the negative point is always about keeping me here and you there. It's always, usually at the expense of others. Negative minds are always self-cherishing minds. They always put you at the centre of your story, and if you put yourself at the centre of the story, where's everybody else? They're not anywhere to be found. And we all know they're the ones that cause the trouble, right? Okay. So, if you're really clear about what an unwholesome mind is, you start to study and understand how it arose. Nothing just comes into being out of nothing. Everything is a dependent arising. Everything is a dependent arising. If mind is subjective, And the angry mind is a subjective mind. Something caused that subjective mind. What was it? And here lies your study. Here lies your meditation. Here lies your process to change. If you think mind is just they, well, it's just who I am. I work with prisoners a lot, and they will say, I mean, not a lot of the prisoners I worked with were people who killed other people, yeah, and not the brightest, you know. You could say very poor education, right? Very poor, very hard, and they were trying their best, but they would say something like, "It's just who I am. I am an angry person. I am a this person." And they're holding on to this really, really tight. You're not like that. You're intelligent, right? So if you start to understand that the mind is subjective, it means it didn't arise out of nowhere. Something gave rise to it. So you study what gave rise to it, and you start to work with eliminating and removing. And you start working on eliminating and movement, not because you're a nice Buddhist. No. It's because you understand the consequences of unwholesome minds. The consequences are horrendous. They are horrendous. You think everything negative that's happening in the world came from positive, wholesome minds? No. It comes from unwholesome minds. So from a psychological point of view, find out how it grew and work with it. Start to reduce and eliminate based on your understanding of what will happen if you continue. And the same with wholesome minds. You build up, you find out what's working, you enhance, you make it more wholesome, more centered on other people. Why? Because you're nice Buddhists? No. It's because based on the understanding of where that will lead. And that leads to genuine happiness that is not temporary, limited, unsatisfactory, and it's not illusory. That's how you use it. However simple it is, or however simple it looks, no. So from a psychological point of view, really work with that. Work with what you understand as wholesome and unwholesome.
Happiness for who? Genuine happiness for who?
Well, genuine happiness, when you're talking about genuine happiness from a Buddhist point of view, look at the opposite, right? Because you must have noticed in the Dharma, when you ask a question and the answer tends to be, well, it's not this, and it's not that, and it's not the next thing, and you're sitting there thinking, would you just tell me what it is? But a lot of Buddha Dharma is about, it's not this. Because you see, we're so full of what we think is real. So when we talk about ignorance, it's not talking about stupidity. It's talking about misknowing, misunderstanding reality. And so when you misknow and misunderstand, then you need to know it's not this and it's not that. Because what you start to do is you start to deconstruct ignorance. Deconstruct it. And when you've deconstructed your ignorance, you have now space to start building up with wisdom, which is what the Buddha Dharma is all about. So if you look at the opposite of samsaric happiness, happiness that you get through the five senses, that's basically it. And of course we live in samsara, we live in a desire realm. So not only do we like pleasure of the five senses, and I'd rather be happy than miserable, much happier. But the whole of society tells you that's what you go for, right? So if you're going after happiness, as long as you're not hurting anyone, right? If you run after sight pleasures and sound pleasures and taste and smell and touch, the whole of society is going, well done, yes, that's why we're here. And they're happy, yes? But you never get that. It never works. And we've had lifetime after lifetime after lifetime chasing external sources of happiness. And even when we think we get it, it's never what you expected. It's never as strong as you wanted. It doesn't last. And then you start chasing after more and more and more because you need more of it to get the same initial high than you got the first time. That's why the Buddha said this type of happiness is temporary. It's unsatisfactory. Really, whatever you get, you're never satisfied. Really. The truth is. It could be better, it could be longer, they could be prettier, they could be handsomer, I could be having more money, I could have nothing. It's unsatisfactory. It's limited. It's very narrow. It's very narrow. It's very narrow because what you're doing is, if you think the source of your happiness is out there, yes, he'll make me happy, she'll make me happy, if I have enough this, that and the next, if I just had respect. It's a good one. If I just had respect. And really, gimme, gimme, gimme. And because you think that's the source of your happiness, where does all your energy go? It goes outwards. Of course it does. Why would it go inward when the source of your happiness is outside? The Dharma is saying, don't be fooled. It's the last part of that is it's illusory. Nothing is as it appears to be. Understand that the source of your happiness is internal. If you actually believe the source, now it's not that everything outside doesn't have an effect. Of course it has an effect, but it's not the source. Now imagine you really believed that. What would you do? Would you be going outside? No. You'd be coming inwards because that's your source. That's what I mean by samsaric happiness. Here, because we have an illusion that the source of our happiness. If I'm happy, if my children are happy, I hear this all the time. If my children are happy, then I'm happy. And I think, really? You allow a 3-year-old to dictate whether you're happy or unhappy? No, I know I've never had children. I understand that. I really understand. But really? If my students pass their exams, I'm happy. Really? You're going to put, but that's what we're saying. Other people make me happy. What you're saying is, I have no control. You have all, please, you have all the control. Make me happy. You see, it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And it's been nonsense since the moment you were born. It's been nonsense lifetime after lifetime. They have an effect, of course. And they can make you temporarily sad, temporarily unhappy. That's true. That's life. But as the source of your happiness, no. It's internal. But we don't wake up to that until you start studying the mind.
If you turn that around and talk about the negative
Yes?
parts, would that be
Absolutely.
the same thing?
Yes. And we're not happy about that. Now, because what we think is, I get people saying this, yes, I am responsible for my own happiness. And you can just see this pride, you know. So then you say to this person, you know you're also responsible for your own unhappiness. Not at all. It's them. It's my children, it's my family, it's my partner, it's the way I work, it's this. Sometimes we're quite happy knowing that we're responsible. We have the basis of our happiness internal, but we're not too keen on the unhappiness bit. But it's the same thing is true. The basis of all our unhappiness is internal. The moment you wake up to realise that you cannot control the external, but you've got a chance of controlling the internal, if you understand your mind, then that's a real realisation. You wake up a bit. You wake up a bit.
No, I was just thinking along those lines, and that when you're feeling miserable, and you discover this just by talking to anyone you know, basically, it's so easy to end up in a situation where you blame the external. And how do you refocus?
Well, first of all, you have to, because we're intelligent creatures, right? Although we're animals, we're not born a dog. If we had Fido sitting here and I tried to teach them about this, what would you get? You'd be lucky to get woof, right? If you had a cat sitting in front of you and you tried to do this with a cat, it would wander off because you're just not feeding me, so I'm not interested, right? But we have a precious human rebirth. We're better than all of that. Don't tell me you couldn't do this. Don't tell me you can understand that. Of course you do. And it doesn't take faith at all. No faith involved. Logic. So what it is, what makes it difficult is habit. And not just habit of one lifetime, but habit of many, many lifetimes of behaving in this way. So there's many ways of doing this. Understand it intellectually first. This is important. Be really clear about mind, be clear about these points, and then meditate. Start to meditate and start to move the mind. So in analytical meditation, you're moving the mind from a misknowing of reality. That's what you do in analysis. You're moving it towards knowing a more realistic, reasonable reality, more in congruence with the truth. And then when you get there, hold it. Employ a bit of shamatha. Because it's the ability to focus that changes the mind. Analysis doesn't change the mind, it adds to your knowledge. But use it in analysis, but once you've got to the point where you need to be, you understand. Stop the internal yak, 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 yak. And sit with it, hold it with your mind. That ability to hold it with your mind changes your mind.
One thing I'm thinking about quite a lot is also, I'm not saying that I'm aware of this and doing this for myself, but you see other people suffering in this way, and you see other people's strong habits in a negative way.
Yes.
And it's difficult to help people that they don't want to be helped.
Yes.
And they don't realize that they actually do have a problem.
Yes.
Have you got anything to say about this, or should I just focus on myself?
No, you always help others. But you have to use wisdom. You see, what we have working is a lot of compassion, and what understanding the mind does is brings in the wisdom. Wisdom and compassion coming together. Compassion, we were talking about this, compassion without wisdom is bondage. It's bondage. So going out trying to help people, after a while you'll get tired. You have compassion fatigue. Yes, that's what I get here. Oh, I've got compassion fatigue. You see, that tells me it's coming from the wrong place. Because both love and compassion, the more you give, the more you have. Now, this is the way of it. You never have a store of compassion, and I'll give you this bit. I'll give you this bit. I'll just hold off here. It's not like that. True compassion, the more you give, without trying, the compassion goes. Giving compassion automatically gives more. Giving love automatically. If it's not doing that, there's a problem. There's a problem. So what you have to do is don't lose the compassion for other people, but be wise. So you need to bring yourself up to speed with wisdom. That's it. And the wiser you are, the more you're able to help. The great Shantideva, interesting, the great Shantideva said, it's impossible to help anyone without clairvoyance. That's what he said. Impossible to help anybody without clairvoyance. So that's one end of the spectrum, right? Because people will always lie to you, and you lie to other people. It's just what we do. But if you can see how other people's minds are working, you can give them what they need, not what they say they need. But we're not Shantideva, we're not Bodhisattva. Well, I don't know about you, but not Shantideva, not Bodhisattvas, so come back. Build up your wisdom. So that everything you do always has that wisdom coming in, having that wisdom coming in. And you'll know you're doing it right when you don't get compassion fatigue. The more you give, the more you'll have. Even if you get it wrong, doesn't matter. Keep trying. But bring in the wisdom. It's the wisdom bit that's missing, usually. Most people in this room, most people I meet are really kind, compassionate people. I meet very few people that aren't, I have to say. Very few people aren't. So the compassion is there, but it's a kind of bondage, you know. I sit with a friend of mine and she watches what's going on in the television and she's in tears. She's in tears. And people say she's so compassionate. No, she is compassionate, but what's happened here is emotion has become compassion. They mix up emotion with compassion. Difficult, not good. Now, tears may come with compassionate mind, of course, but it's not necessary. The most compassionate teachers I know never cry. What they cry for, nothing to cry about. But you and I, if we're being compassionate in this situation, if we cry, that's fine. But that's not compassion. It accompanies compassion, but if you make the mistake thinking it is compassion, I think you're in problems. Then you will get tired. And the last thing I would say is, you keep helping others, but don't judge them. I know that's hard, But Naropa, actually, great Naropa said, judging others is really, that's samsara. Judging others. So whenever you can, try not to do that. You see, we tend to help those who are deserving. You know those people, right? As opposed to the people who are undeserving. You can't read their minds, you have no idea. Yes, and it's all about judgment. So best not to do that. Now, however, let's say you're walking on the road and someone is begging for money. I have friends who will never do it, give money, because they say they are absolutely convinced that if they give money, they'll spend it all on alcohol and drugs. And they tell me that. And I say, well, how do you know? I know some people do, but how do you know everybody does? I know. Well, as long as you think like that, then maybe best not to give. Maybe. I think that's reasonable. But I can't read their minds. So 9 times out of 10, I'll always give something, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure that these people are bodhisattvas who've been waiting for me to develop some compassion for many, many lifetimes. I'm not sure. They could be. So I'm not going to let that pass by. But if I knew, or I had a strong, strong feeling that they were going to spend it on drugs, then I wouldn't do it, because that's not wise. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything else coming out of wholesome or unwholesome? So you know why we're studying wholesome and unwholesome, right? This is only the start. Identifying is only the start. Now we start with neutral minds, which I know you, every one of you really loved that bit. I know you did. So, neutral minds, neutral minds. What type of things were neutral minds? Because these are very, very important minds. These are important. They're all important, but this is particularly important. So what type of thing did you come up with neutral minds? And by neutral minds we mean the mind that is not positive and wholesome, but neither is it unwholesome and negative.
I thought about arrogance.
About what?
Arrogance.
Arrogance. I would say that's more negative. It seems more... Again, I use my criteria.
Yeah.
Arrogance is usually against someone else or in competition with someone else, and that has to be negative. That has to be, that's kind of, it sounds to me more negative, doesn't it? Yeah.
So what about just going on autopilot, you know, waking
Yes.
up, having a coffee?
Right, stop. Having a coffee. Having a coffee. I see the rumour may have got about that I drink a lot of coffee, I don't know. So you're having a cup of coffee, your mind is not wholesome, it is not unwholesome. It's neutral. That's a neutral mind. The mind is just thinking, I'll have a cup of coffee. It's not saying, ooh, I want that coffee. You know, it's not, it's just, you know, it's not every time you have, because sometimes I have a cup of coffee and I'm going, I want it now. Like now. Not in 5 minutes. What are you doing? Give me it now. What's wrong? You had 5 minutes and I still don't have a coffee in my hand. Where is it? This is a negative mind, right? But the mind that's saying, well, I think I have a coffee. It's not wholesome, it's not unwholesome, neutral. Well done. What other mind?
Paying attention?
Paying attention. Again, it would depend on context.
Concentration?
No, I wouldn't say that was neutral. I think you could make it neutral. I wouldn't say so. No. Because what we're looking at is moments of mind. What else could you be doing?
If you don't care, if you just don't care.
So what are you doing when you don't, what don't care means, in this context, not wholesome, not unwholesome. What could you be doing?
There's a lot of things you can, like, I mean, if you have a copy, you can read a book.
Yes.
You can,
Okay, stop.
it's like
Right.
This kind of things.
Exactly.
You just change the coffee to something else.
Exactly. Exactly. Standing up. Do I have a wholesome or unwholesome 99 times out of 100 every time I stand up? I don't. It's neutral. Eating. Now, eating can be negative and it can be wholesome. But 99 times out of 100, you're eating, having a chat, you know, sort of very neutral, very neutral. Yes? What else could you be doing?
Sleeping?
Sleeping. Sleeping. Now, you could be sleeping negatively. I don't want to get anatomical here, but it could be, right? But you could turn that, it could be positive. But 99 times out of 100, neutral. Sleep is neutral. Deciding to go here, deciding to go there, neutral. And if you think about it, a lot of what we do throughout the day is neutral. Really. If there are 60 mental moments, a minimum in a snap of a finger, think about 24 hours a day. Most of that isn't positive or negative. Most of it is kind of neutral. Now, why is it important to know neutral?
So you can change it into positive.
Exactly, exactly. The texts are very clear. A neutral mind, understanding, recognizing, seeing how it developed, exactly the same as positive and negative, and then doing something with it positive. The texts say that neutral mind is like having a white cloth. You can dye it any colour. So a neutral mind can very quickly become a negative mind, unwholesome, and it can very quickly become a positive mind, wholesome.
Has it got something to do with not being present?
Yes. Are we getting into secular mindfulness here? Not. I would at the moment I would say no. I would say no. But I can't see where you're coming from. Maybe if we get more time, we can look at that. But in this context, let's. You see, you're being too clever for me. You're taking it too far out. You see.
Can you say that you're unengaged?
Unengaged.
You're in a conversation with people. People are talking, and you are just like you're there, but you're not really participating.
So you're kind of spacing out.
Yeah, could be.
Could you turn that into a wholesome or unwholesome? Here's a criteria you could use. Well,
yeah, I think
well, okay,
so.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
But then, no, then you have to work for it. Labeling is not enough. Know how it arose, right? Then do something with it. So how would you turn a neutral mind of sleep? No, let's take eating. How would you take a neutral mind of eating, and if you think how many times a day you eat, how many times a day you drink? Many. How could you turn that into something positive?
Mindful
Into a positive, wholesome mind.
Mindful eating. Feeling the taste.
Yes, I'm not really into that. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. And if your aim is to be present in the moment, non-judgmentally aware, that's fine. But that's not what you're doing with this. You're making it into a wholesome mind with this particular aspect of being wholesome. You see, on one point can you say, if you ate mindfully, is that positive? I would say yes. Of course, it's not negative and it's not neutral. But in the context of this, I would say it has a possibility, but not in and of itself. Because what we're looking at is behaviour, not just not doing something, or just being aware.
Be thankful. Having food to eat.
Okay, so we bring that in.
Sharing it with someone else.
That would be helpful. Because if you share something you have with someone else, you'll start thinking quite positively about the food. Yeah, I'm thinking more in the realms of motivation. That's what I'm thinking. If a wholesome mind is to do with having these wholesome thoughts, yes? If an unwholesome mind is about having unwholesome thoughts, then turning a neutral mind into wholesome would have a lot to do with how you view it, how you see it. And of course, within the Buddha Dharma, what you're talking about now is motivation. Why do Buddhists motivate at the very beginning of every session? Because they want to get the mind in the best space possible. Buddhists understand that motivation, to some degree, is karma. Okay? It is karma. So how would you, using motivation, how could you turn the act of eating into...
Is it about nourishment?
Say again, dear?
Nourishment. Is it about nourishment as motivation?
It could be, but extend that further. So the motivation is, may I be nourished?
Yeah, to sustain
Go,
whatever.
go further.
Activities or something. Activities that I need to, or
So that I may be able to...
certain, I don't know. Do something.
to have a healthy body in order to give
Yeah.
benefit to others. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
If you had that in your mind as you were eating, would then that be a wholesome mind?
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If the motivation was, I pray for all the insects and animals that died in order to make sure I had that, would that be a wholesome mind? I have great gratitude for all the this on my plate did not just happen. Someone cooked it, someone prepared it, and even before that, someone grew it, someone packaged it, someone cherished it, someone packaged it, someone sold it to me. And it doesn't matter that they did it because they like you or they were getting paid to. No, that's got nothing to do with it. All of that. So if you sat and your motivation was building up gratitude for people who did that, would that be a wholesome mind? Yes. Yeah. You can start now identifying something that you do every day that's kind of neutral.
I think if people would think like that, the food wouldn't be thrown away so much.
Exactly. Or you could be like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and the story is often told that his motivations are so long that the food is still cold by the time anybody can eat it. And Roger tells the story that when Rinpoche is on a plane and he's given food and he starts his motivation, he's still doing it as they remove the tray because they're descending to the airport. And then he'll say something like, well, the motivation was more important than eating. So I'm not saying be like that. Well, it would be great to be like that, but there's steps before that. And it's only training. It's knowing that it's worthwhile. So you could choose one thing that you do every day that's neither positive or negative, that's done with neither a wholesome mind or an unwholesome mind. You can't choose one thing that you do quite a few times a day, and you can turn that into a wholesome action. If you do that, the benefits are huge. Purification is strong, you gain a lot of merit, but you start to alter your mind. Now, this is easier to do in retreat, right? When you're in retreat, this is much easier, right? But imagine you chose something in retreat like, well, every time I switch a light on, my motivation will be, may I switch on some wisdom in everything I do to benefit others. Switch on the light. You just think quickly, yes? And when you switch the light off, you think, may I be able to switch off my ignorance so I can be of more benefit to others. Just you start thinking. Just start thinking. In the beginning, do you believe it? No. I guarantee you don't believe any of this, right? But you see, through intelligence, you know it's worthwhile. So you start off thinking, I admire that idea. I don't believe it, but I admire it. So you start off admiring it. So you practice, and you practice. And you're faking it, right? Mostly. Then it grows, and you start to think, I wish I could think like that. So you start to aspire to think like that. And before you know it, you're thinking like that. That's how it develops. Admiring, aspiring, and then before you know it, you're doing it. And it becomes part of who you are. It's like right at the very beginning, we say, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And most of us are going, a Buddha, me? But right from day one with Mahayana, you start with that. You fake it till you make it. You keep saying it because intellectually you know this is possible. You'd rather be here than there. So I'm going to train my mind in this way. And after a while, it becomes more about what you're about, who you are.
Could you do it in different ways? I'm thinking, could you do it in one way where you could, you get compassionate, tired? Could you do this the same way,
Yes.
sort of?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if you wake up and you had a really bad sleep, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna, everything I do today, I'm gonna, I want to, but maybe could it be tiresome in some way?
Everything. You can turn, if you can turn unwholesome into wholesome, right? Easily, right? you can turn neutral into wholesome. This is what you find out when you start studying it and working with how it built up, how it actually arose, and then what the consequences would happen if you didn't change it. So if you can change an angry mind into a loving mind by changing your mind. If you can do that, you can turn neutral into positive. You can do it.
But is she talking about pushing? Like, oh, I've had a bad sleep, but I'm going to be something else. That energy of pushing.
All right,
Is
I'm
that
not
what
keen.
you're talking about?
I mean, it could be. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking like, do we need some time to just be neutral, to sort of relax?
Oh, yes.
If you're kind of that person that wants.
But you don't have to be
maybe
pushy.
Yeah.
But relaxing, I like to relax. That's one of my favourite things to do. Oh yeah. So you're not being. You don't have. All this is not about pushing. It's about just changing the mental attitude. I am very tired. You think to yourself, I'm very tired at the moment. Really, I don't know about you, but when I'm tired is when I make mistakes. When I'm tired is when I say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. Now I know that with me. I don't know about you, but I know that with me. So if I'm tired, I thought I'm going to lie down, I'm going to relax, because I would rather have my mind relaxed, so the next person I meet, I can deal with her reasonably. You can never lose if you bring someone, even if you're thinking, how do I do this? Bring someone else, other people into the equation, and make them important. Then it's not difficult.
Because I'm thinking, like in the beginning, you can sort of be more of like attention, sort of pushing.
Yes.
But I'm thinking through practice, maybe you can ease in that, and it becomes more.
Yes.
And yeah.
But motivation doesn't take energy, doesn't take time. Get into the habit of motivating what you're doing. Motivate the positive. Do not motivate the negative. Recognize the negative, turn it into the positive, and then motivate. So it's recognizing these minds as they arise. And it doesn't take much. It's not huge effort. It's just a mental attitude change. The difference it makes is amazing.
Question.
Sorry.
Can we back again to this expression, fake it until we make
Yes.
it? Can
That's this is not in the text. I just wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Because it's a trend here also. I hear it so many everywhere, everywhere. And unfortunately, I'm not so much can get it in my mind. And I wonder if it is possible to replace it with understanding, experiment,
Yes.
analyzing.
Yes.
Do it, because
Yes.
that's fake it until we make it. We might land in a state of habitum. And if I would say example about myself, it took for me. I didn't want to prostrate in the beginning.
No.
Just fake it until I make it. It will be. I will just do it as a sport. It takes many months until I make the first humble and respect prostration.
I know what you're saying, but here's the difference with this. You would never fake it unless intellectually you realised it was useful. You're not following it because someone else is doing it who's got no hair sense and a bad, even worse dress sense, right? You're not doing it because somebody's saying to do it. This idea of fake it till you make it, you only fake it because you don't feel it in your heart, but you understand it in your head that it's right. Now, we live our lives knowing certain things, but behaving as if the opposite is true. This is true. We behave disconnectedly. We do. We understand how things exist, but we don't behave as if that's true. There's a huge disconnect, right? So that's our normal pattern, so make it work for you. This is samsara. You can't wait until it gets better. This is our habit. Let's turn that habit into something we can use. And what we use is this. Don't just do it. Whatever you're going to do, intellectually understand it first. Say to yourself, or study, and if you say, no, that's not useful, but that's reasonable. That's good. I'd like to be like that. I'm not like that, but I'd like to be like that. That's the point, that you start doing it anyway, doing it anyway, doing it anyway, right? You're faking. You don't feel. You know it's right, but you don't feel it's right. So how do you bridge that gap? Just do it. Just do it, and
That's
change
an
will
option.
come.
Okay, that's an option. Another option might be like, even if I would not do it in this moment, I'm still activating and this intellectual mind and analyze it and recognize it, and just with the motivation I have, I will just come in a situations that brings me naturally.
There is many ways of doing it for many different people. But His Holiness says very clearly, understand it intellectually first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, although you don't feel it, if you know it's right, how do you make it your habit? How does your heart and mind marry? The only way I know is by doing it.
And
I
how
know
you know it's right? If
well, that's right. You have to know it's right.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
Right.
This is why I'm saying we are intelligent beings. I couldn't explain this to a dog or a horse or a cat, but I can explain it to you, can't I? And you can explain it to other people. If you don't think it's right, don't. I never do anything I don't think is right. I mean, my mother used to say, Mary, it's just as well you like working. And it's true. If I don't like what I'm doing and it doesn't seem reasonable, I don't do it. I really don't. I've never done it. Why would I do it? So you have to come to some conclusion through study and meditating. This is how I want to be. You come out of meditation, you're not like that, but you want to be like that. What bridges the gap is doing it. And you know it works because of this. Take vegetarianism. I want you to take that idea of vegetarianism. Some people become vegetarians, right, because they love animals, right? They understand the planet. They understand this is a ridiculous thing to be doing when it's not necessary in this culture to be doing it. And they come from the compassion, right? And they become vegetarians. Reasonable? I think that's reasonable. There are other people like me, where I tried quite often to be a vegetarian, couldn't have tried hard enough, and, you know, couldn't do it. Very difficult. Until one day, a lama who will remain nameless tricked me, although this is a long story, but never mind, tricked, more or less, I wanted something, he wouldn't give it to me until I promised. And the promise he wanted from me was, I started to say, and I won't eat meat, because he was trying to get people not to eat meat for 3 months. This is many years ago. So I was about to say to him, and I promise not to eat meat for, and I was just about to say 3 months, and he leant forward and he said, for the rest of your life. And I had to make a choice. And the choice was, do I want what I want? And I did. So I went, for the rest of my life. Now, I had been 20 minutes in that meeting and he didn't give me anything. As soon as I said that, I got everything I wanted. Right? So here was me, not wanting to be vegetarian, because I tried, not hard enough, obviously, but I made a promise. And I try to keep my promises, right? So I thought, what do I do? Now, here's the thing. After a few months, what did I find? Not only was my body better, I noticed that, but what I noticed was I was kinder to animals. Now, I was never a nasty to animals, never. I always tried to be helpful to animals, always. But I noticed a difference. My heart was coming into play with the animals. I started to feel more compassionate towards animals. I started to think more about the planet. Do you see what I'm telling you? Some people come at it this way. Some people come at it that way. What's important is you get there. Now, in a way, I was faking it. I made a promise. It didn't come from what you would say was the right place. Well, it was fairly right. I made a promise, I kept it. But the results were tremendous. Tremendous. I couldn't believe the softening in my heart. Couldn't believe it. Because I thought my heart was softer before. It wasn't true, not in comparison. So I have friends that came to this through their love of animals. I came to it because I wanted something that I wouldn't get unless I promised not to be. But I noticed the change. And this is what happens. If you intellectually understand something to be correct and you decide that's what you want, but you find it hard to do, there is a mantra. And the mantra is, just do it. Just do it. And what you'll find is halfway through, things will change.
So am I hearing correctly that it's a combination of motivation and discipline?
Oh yes,
And to get
discipline
into
is
that
always there.
experience.
Yes. And we're capable of it. We have a precious human rebirth. We're capable of that. So I need to, there's other questions I know, but I just want to have a look at these mental factors. So, because I'm aware of the time, I'm so sorry. So if you look at the last two headings, does everybody have that, by the way? Everybody got a copy or a copy they can share? I want you to look at the other side.
I would like to have one.
Of course.
Thank you.
Can I give people, anybody want another one? Anybody want more? Look at the other side. You're okay? Anybody else? Okay. So what I need you to look now on this mind and its potential, this one here, this page, the other side. Okay. Can you see the last two headings, main mind and mental factors? This is part of the psychology of mind. What you're looking at here is you're looking at, Buddhism recognizes 6 minds, 5 sense minds and mental consciousness, right? All of those minds are subjective. All of those minds are, let's just say subjective. Okay, now, each of those is a primary mind. The mind of smell, taste, touch, hearing, and mental consciousness is a primary mind, right? Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of mind. Primary mind is passive. Primary mind is passive. The only thing a primary mind does is apprehend the object in the totality of it. A primary mind doesn't discuss, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, it's passive. Its only job is to apprehend the whole of the object. Now that becomes important later on. Not in the next 10 minutes, but if you study, you need to understand that. Now, with each primary mind, and that's the primary mind of all the senses plus mental consciousness, you have what's called mental factors. You never have a primary mind arising without mental factors. They arise together. Both of these are not different minds. Mental factors arise with the primary mind. Right? They arise with the primary mind, but they have a different function. The primary mind's function is simply to apprehend the whole of the object. The primary mind, the mental factors, their job is to recognize the characteristics of the object the primary mind is seeing. Do you see that? So the primary mind only function is to apprehend the object. Nothing else. It's passive. Mental factors, which always accompany and arise at the same time, they're not different, just arise at the same time, their function is to apprehend the characteristics, the qualities of that particular object. The mental factors select objects. The mental factors are responsible for your happiness and unhappiness, not your primary mind. Now, when you're studying these things, you're studying them for a reason. You have to see where they arise, what they do, how to mitigate them, how to get rid of them, how to generate. And if I said to you, there are, let's say, 51 mental factors, 51. You're lucky we're not going through them all. Just listen to the list. There are 5 always present mental factors, 5 object ascertaining mental factors, 11 wholesome mental factors, 6 root unwholesome mental factors, 20 secondary mental factors, and 4 changeable mental factors. Now you're getting the idea of wholesome, unwholesome, neutral. Now this is when you go into the mental factors, it takes wholesome, unwholesome and neutral and they writ it large. Now you're going to develop that. But what's important, this you can all study, it's no problem, like it's lists. Tibetans are very keen on lists.
Yes, they are.
But understand this, each mind, 6 minds, are passive. The primary mind is passive. What is active is the mental factors that accompany it. They decide on your happiness. They decide that this is nice and this is not nice and I like that and I don't like that and this is blue and that's red and she's, you know, it's the characteristics, the qualities. It's the basis of your feelings really, you know, whether you enjoy something or not. And if you turn that page over, you'll see that what you have here is the second half I'm going to look at here, the second half. Because what's interesting here is although there are 51 mental factors, you don't always have 51 mental factors with each moment of mind. Right? That makes sense. You'd be exhausted if you did. But you always have at least 5. There is never a primary mind without at least 5 mental factors. Now, if you imagine the hand is the mind, right? The fingers are the mental factors, right? But this is still hand, isn't it? Yes? This is still hand. But the primary mind is passive. What does the work? The mental factors, qualities, right? With each mental factor, you have at least 5 accompanying mental factors. And that's what we're going to look at now. 5 accompanying mental factors. Is that clear so far? Okay. So when you read, I mean, I know you're all going to go home and study this like mad. I know. So the 5 all accompanying mental factors, they're always with the mind. Always. A mind does not arise without this, and that becomes important. When we do bodhicitta, this is going to be even more important. But anyway, at the moment. So if you look at contact, that's a mental factor. Its function is to meet the object. To meet the object. Make sense? The second one, mental factor, is discrimination. That mental factor notes the characteristics. It identifies the object. And it's also, discrimination is also the basis of our memory. So you've got the mind moves contact, mental factor, identifying. Second, discrimination, identifying the object, basis of memory. The third one, now you've got it, decided what it is, now the mental factor of feeling arises. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? That comes in then. Then you have the fourth one, intention. So it's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Then intention kicked in. And when intention here kicks in, you're talking about volition. You're talking the energy to do something. So you're talking about a principle of activity here, that mental factor. It's all about karma, this. This is where your karma really comes from. It directs the mind. It directs the mind this way or that way. That way or that way, creating karma. It's not only is it your energy, is the basis of karma, it also triggers all activity, that mental factor, that intention. And the last one is attention, that mental factor. And that one focuses, what the job of that mental factor is to focus on the object to the exclusion of everything else. To the exclusion of everything else. That one, attention, is what is developed in concentration. All of us have a form of quite strong attention. Some people have got very poorly developed attention span. People say, oh, she's got poor attention span, yes? But other people have got good attention span. But it's that mental factor that's developed in concentration. That one. So with each moment of mind, these 5 always arise. You've no choice, they're there. So take intention. Take intention. I know we're kind of close to the end, but still, just take that intention. What you're talking about here is I can say I intend to take a sip of my tea, right? That's intention, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. It's very gross though, right? Very gross. But let's take that a step back. It could be, you can make it more refined, intention more refined. It could be more like volition. I moved to intend to pick this up. Intention is not just arise from nothing. There's a volition and energy behind it. And you can catch that energy beforehand. But behind that volition, there's an urge. There's an urge to do this. You're catching intention subtler and subtler and subtler. That intention there is the most subtle intention of all. But to get to that, we need to work with growths. Yes? Then you work with more subtle, more subtle. And all those mental factors are like that. If we say that it is mental factors that decide whether the primary mind is positive or negative, it just takes one of those mental factors to be negative for the whole mind to be negative. It's not the best out of 3. Just one. So imagine again the hand, right? Just imagine the hand. And imagine if one of these fingers are broken and you try to write a sentence now with that hand, right? With that broken. What would it be like? It'd be dreadful, wouldn't it? You couldn't do it really. You'd have to. So it's like that with the mind. If one mental factor is negative and unwholesome, the whole mind becomes unwholesome. Because it is the mental factors that decide on the quality of the mind. So we started off looking broadly at wholesome, unwholesome and neutral. And now we're coming in. Coming in. And so the study of psychology is not just, first of all, understand what they are, so you can work with them, but then look at the mental factors in detail. Understand really very well the 5 all accompanying mental factors. Make sure you know those really well. And then the others you study. And you study them because what is positive, you find out how they arise, and you make them better. You find out what is unwholesome and what is real, because you've got root unwholesome, root, and you kind of work with them quite a lot, and you work on them. Find them earlier and earlier. Find the energy earlier, and stop it here. Don't stop it here. Initially, you stop it here, but then you stop it here. Yes? You see what I'm saying?
Is that what you mean by root? Going back like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Find the root of it.
Yeah.
And if you study mental factors, they have root afflictions. Study those well. Why? To alter your behaviour, to be happier. And if you're happier, other people, the Buddha was very clear about that, you will not be genuinely happy unless others are genuinely happy. You need other people to be happy. You think you don't, but you do. But I want to thank you very much for this evening. You've been really great. You've been working hard and giving me good questions and things like that. So I really do appreciate that. But 2 hours have gone. And the study of the mind goes on. But if you're approaching it now from a psychological point of view, I want you to understand and hold in your mind about wholesome, unwholesome and neutral, understanding primary mind and mental factors so that you can work with them. If you get that from today, I'm very happy. The rest, you need to study. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
And so what we've been doing today, if you think it's been positive, you know, because you had a motivation at the beginning, right? Between then and now, you've created a lot of wholesome minds. Well, I'm decided, it's all wholesome, right? Okay, so really a lot of positive karma, and you need to keep it safe. The mind is very interesting. The mind has difficulty, so the teachers say, of holding on to positivity. Our habit is not that. So you need to kind of push it like a seed into the ground so that when the winds come, the seed will still be there. So you've created that positivity. So now, to keep it safe, we use dedication. Now, you don't have to do the prayers. All you have to do is to think of the motivation that you had and then dedicate the energy that you've created towards achieving that. Right? That's all you have to do. Sit for a minute or two and do that. And for those of you who are happy to do the prayers to help you do that, then we go to
Page 4.
Page 4, thank you. So we do the first two dedication prayers. And then in Tibetan, as an acknowledgement of the kindness of our teachers. Really. If the Tibetans hadn't kept these teachings safe, we wouldn't have the pure Dharma. Dharma has been corrupted in a lot of places through many different reasons. But nobody wanted to invade Tibet very much until the Chinese, bless them. So the Tibetans kept the Dharma clear. They kept it. There's been no corruption, and so as an acknowledgement of that, I tend to do the first time in Tibetan and then the second time in English. But otherwise, just keeping that positivity in your mind is good enough. Lama Sangye Drugyune Drova Chinkyan Malupa Geki Sala Jancho Samcho Rinpoche Ma Ke Padang Ke Gyurchen Ke Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Goni Gong Du Pelwar Shu. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious Bodhi-mind, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And if you're interested to know what the Bodhi-mind is, the whole weekend is about that. Just a plug. Thank you again.
Thank you.